Boys
Hi,
and girls,
guys.
what, can you say hi?
Hi.
Miss Stark, we are honored and privileged to have a conversation with you. We actually watched a few of your stories this morning. I wanted to show the kids because it was kind of a surprise. We weren't sure how long it was going to if we was going to be able to work out. This is actually our last week of summer school here, so we wanted to kind of surprise them, and they were thrilled and privileged and honored to get to talk with you and meet you over Skype. And they came up with some really great questions. I was actually really impressed with some of the questions they came up with. So if you're ready, can we ask away?
Roll tape. I'm ready. Go for it.
All right, Marissa, you can start us off.
Hi, I'm Marissa. What college did you attend? What did you study?
So what college did you attend and what did you study there?
Well, I was in California for high school and junior high school. So I went to a California college. I went to University of California at Berkeley. It's a really big school in Berkeley, California, near San Francisco. And I knew I probably wanted to be a journalist already by then. And so I was briefly a journalism major. But I decided I didn't really like their journalism major for some reason. And to be honest with you, I don't remember why. It's been too many years now. So I ended up majoring in something called political science, where you study politics. But even while I was doing that, I always worked on outside of the classroom, writing for a newspaper, working at the campus radio station, doing internships, meaning I would, during the summer, I would work for real radio and TV stations. So that's what I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't major in journalism.
Excellent. Dominic, let's go number 2.
Hi, my name is Dominic. How does it feel to be a reporter on ABC News?
How does it feel to be a reporter on ABC News?
Well, it feels like a big responsibility. It's really fun, but it's a lot of work. And you feel like you have a big responsibility because you want to make sure the main thing about being a reporter is you want to make sure you get your facts right. You don't want to say something on TV or if you're a writer in the newspaper that's not accurate. And sometimes you make mistakes and then you have to correct them, but you try really hard not to make mistakes. So it feels fun and interesting, but it also feels like a lot of responsibility.
Excellent. Gio.
Um, Hi, my name is Giovanni. Did you always work in TV news?
Did you always work in TV news?
I didn't. When I graduated college, my first jobs were actually in radio news. So I worked at 2 different radio stations doing the news for those radio stations. And those I would cover like the local news. I would go to city council meetings. I would go to the school board. I would go cover school issues. I would cover whatever is going on in that local community. So I worked in radio first before I did television.
Excellent. Devion. Did you ever want to be an anchor or another part of the news team besides a reporter?
These are all great questions that you guys came up with, by the way. You know what? I was an anchor for a while. When I worked at a number of different television stations before I came to ABC News, and I worked in Portland, Oregon, and in Eugene, Oregon. And both of those locations, I was the anchor of the news. And it's a lot of fun to be an anchor. The only thing I didn't like about being an anchor is I didn't get to go out and do as much reporting. And it's really fun to go out and talk to people and get to ask questions and meet people. So although I liked being an anchor, I think it's more fun if you can do a little bit of both.
David?
Did you always want to be a reporter or did you want to be something else?
Did you always want to be a reporter, even when you were younger? Did you want to be something else when you grew up?
You know, at one point I thought I was going to be a math teacher, believe it or not, because I used to really like math. But I also thought maybe I would be a lawyer. I thought about that. But when I was in high school, so I wasn't that much older than you guys, when I was in high school, someone asked me to come work for the high school newspaper. And so I thought, okay, I'll try it. And I just fell in love with it. And that was when I was a junior and 11th grader in high school. So ever since I started working at that high school newspaper, I knew that I wanted to be a reporter.
Excellent. Erica?
Hi, my name is Erica. Do you have to travel to cover a news story?
Do you ever have to travel to cover a news story?
I have to travel. Luckily, not too much because I have 2 kids at home, so I don't like to travel too much. I have 2 high school kids. But I do travel because the news isn't always where I'm sitting, right? I have to go places. I've been all over the country. I've been to the middle of the country to do flood stories. I've been to Colorado to cover the Pope. I've been to California to do earthquakes. I've went to France once even to cover an airplane accident. When I was in local news, I got to go to Australia to cover the America's Cup races, these sailing races in Australia. So I do get to travel. Luckily, I don't have to travel a lot, which is good because I don't want to travel a lot. But in this business, you do have to travel.
Great question. Sarah, go ahead.
My name is Sarah. How do you decide what to report on? Do you pick your stories?
How do you decide what to report on, and do you pick your own stories?
Did you guys come up with these questions? These are such great questions. I can't believe it. Well, it's a little bit of both. I can decide this is an interesting story, and then I go to my bosses in New York. They're my editors, they're called, and they have to agree or not agree. And sometimes they say, oh, we like that story, go do it. And sometimes they say, no, we don't like that story, and then I can't do it because they, have to approve it. And sometimes they come to me and say, oh, we really want you to do this story. We think it's really interesting. So you are expected as a reporter to come up with your own story ideas. But it doesn't mean that you'll always get to do them because there are bosses above me who get to decide what stories I really end up doing.
It's kind of like when we were talking about when we make our plan for TNN, and sometimes you guys will pitch, maybe you want to do a movie review on a movie from a long time ago, and we say, well, maybe let's think about some ideas of movies that may be in the theater now, or things like that. So Miss McGuire and I might say, that's a great idea, but let's change it around a little bit. Kind of similar to that.
Very much so.
All right, let's go to Riley. What do you like most about your job?
Okay, I like that. 2 things. One is that I'm always learning. I feel like I'm always learning new things, and I love that about my job. Things I never would have had a chance to learn. And the other thing is I get to ask people questions all the time. Like I get to call people up who I don't know and ask them questions, and I get to meet new people all the time. And those are 2 of the most fun things about my job.
That's a great one. Jordan. Do you ever have to report on news in the middle of the night?
Oh, yes. In fact, it's funny you should say that because last night at midnight, they said to me, we may have to wake you up at 5 in the morning for this story we're thinking about. So I said, okay. Luckily, they didn't have to wake me up at 5 in the morning. But the news is 24 hours. And so you are basically, how they say sometimes like doctors always can get called in the middle of the night? Well, so can news reporters. So yes, there's lots of times I've been woken up in the middle of the night and I have to come to work because there's some news thing that's happening that Good Morning America in the morning might want me to talk about. So that's why I would have to get up in the middle of the night.
Excellent. William. Do you have a favorite story in your career that you've done a report on?
You know, it's going to be a funny answer because a lot of people say, "Oh, who were the famous people you met?" And I've probably met a few famous people here and there, and I remember them. But the stories I remember are the stories that of like the everyday, really interesting people. And one of my favorite stories was when I worked for a television station in San Francisco, and there was a man there who was very ill, and he was losing his eyesight. And there was a new medicine that would help him not lose his eyesight, and he couldn't get it. They wouldn't give it to him. And I managed to do some stories and got him that medicine. And so he could continue to keep his eyesight and read his books, which he loved to do. And that is one of the stories I'm most proud of that I did.
Excellent. Let's do Alejandro.
What was my name is Alejandro. What was the hardest story you ever reported?
What was the hardest or the most difficult story you've ever had to report on?
Probably the two stories that were the hardest stories were the 9/11 attacks in New York. And you guys know of the terrorist attacks. And because I was covering airplanes at that time, and so obviously I was very involved in that story. And the other story that was really hard was the Oklahoma City bombing. There was a bombing in Oklahoma City a number of years ago that unfortunately hurt a lot of people. And I flew out to do that story, and that was a very hard story too. Those are sad stories to do.
Absolutely. When we read your biography, we read the biography to the kids. That was kind of my guess when they came up with that question after, kind of piggyback onto what was your favorite. And after
Right.
reading your biography, I said, I think those are probably going to be the two answers that you say. And probably even TWA Flight 800, too, was another one where, there was a large amount of loss of life. And as a reporter, I can't imagine having to, contain yourself and keep a straight face when you're doing that. Now, this is kind of my question to you. Is there kind of a trick to that, or how do you hide your own emotions when you do a report?
It's interesting. I think that I think two things. One is when I covered airplanes for a long time, and so I have been at a lot of airplane crashes. But I always made a deal with my bosses because I had to keep covering them, that for the most part, I would just do the investigation and I wouldn't talk to the families or do the people. And other reporters would do that because I thought that would be very, very hard. And in fact, the few times I had to do that, it was really, really difficult. But I think you just get into a work mode. Like you're just very focused on your work and you try to just contain yourself. It's not easy. Sometimes you can't do it. I mean, maybe, for example, Robin Roberts, who's one of our anchors on Good Morning America, after Hurricane Katrina, which devastated the town she was from, I think in Louisiana, she went down there and did some reporting, and she couldn't contain herself. It's not always easy to do. So you just try to be as professional as you can, but understand that sometimes you are going to be emotional about something.
Let's go to Andrew, number 15. What about the awards? Mm-hmm. For what reason did you receive your MA and Peabody Awards?
Oh my gosh, is it embarrassing to tell you I don't remember? Let's see, I have 2 Emmys. One was for a 3-part series I did with 2 other reporters, and it had to do with pensions, like the kind of money you get after you retire and what was happening with pensions. You retire from your job, some people get money to continue to live on. That was one of the Emmys. The other Emmy, I think, might have been for 9/11 coverage, and so it was kind of a whole ABC-wide Emmy. And then the Peabody, I think, also had to do with our coverage of 9/11. So with the attacks in New York. So I think that was what that was for, but I'm not 100% sure.
Now these next 2, I think, were very, very, very relative to what we're doing here. So Shakur, go ahead. This was a good question.
How did you learn to speak loud and look at the camera when you report?
How did you learn how to speak loud and look at the camera so well when you report?
Well, I'll be honest with you. You don't speak loud. It may seem like you're speaking loud, but that microphone, you know, the little microphone we wear, and I saw you guys holding microphones in your stories, they can pick up very quiet sounds. So the thing that's actually harder is to tell yourself not to speak loud. So, because then you look like you're shouting into the camera, which you don't want to do. So, and as far as looking in the camera, I don't know how I learned that. I just was always able to do that. You kind of imagine that you're just looking at a person maybe, and you just keep your eyes on the camera. But you definitely don't want to speak loud, which is, I still have that problem sometimes. I still think, oh, I've got to speak really loud, but you don't have to do that.
All right, Noah. When you report, do you use cue cards when you're out in the field?
Believe it or not, I do not use cue cards. Some people do, and now there's a new thing because everyone has these iPads, right? And you actually have an electronic cue card, an electronic teleprompter in a sense that you can use. I haven't tried it yet, but people say they're great. But no, I just try to memorize what I'm going to say as much as possible. I keep a notepad with some notes in case I have to look at it. And you have to remember, the people who are watching you on the other side of the camera, they don't know what you're going to say. So if you miss a word or you say something a little differently, they don't know that. They don't have a cue cards in front of them. They don't know exactly what you're going to say. So as long as you continue to speak clearly, that's more important than speaking loudly, is to speak very precisely. It's called enunciation. So you say every letter and every word. As long as you do that and you continue talking and you get the main ideas across, you're just fine.
Perfect. You know, I think that was one thing. We always watch our production after we complete it, and I think that's always the one critique that they always have of themselves is that they never feel like they're making enough eye contact, or they could actually see their eyes reading the cue cards as they go along. That's always their big critique of themselves.
Well, you know, when you're in TV like I am, you have something called a teleprompter, which you guys don't have, right?
No.
So the words appear right in the camera in front of you. So when you're reading, and you do have to make it look like you're not reading the words, but when you guys do it, your cue cards are probably above the camera, right? Or maybe below the camera, so that's why you're not making eye contact. But when I'm on television, if I'm inside and I can have my teleprompter, those words are right in the camera. So that's why I'm looking right into the camera.
Excellent. Andrew, you go to your other one. If you had to take a guess, how many reports do you think you have done in your career?
Ooh, wow. This is my math teacher side coming back into effect, right? I would say, well, thousands, clearly.
Wow.
Thousands and thousands. I would say, let me just think for a minute here. I would say at least 3,000 to 5,000, maybe?
Wow.
I don't know, a lot.
That is a lot, yeah.
A lot.
Dominic, we'll go to your second one.
Did you report on the
Excellent.
accident?
Now, Dominic is a very big watcher of Good Morning America, and he has senior reports on Good Morning America. So he's curious, did you do a report on the train accident that just recently happened in Spain?
I didn't, because what they like to do is have someone who's closer to the accident do it, right? If they can. Mm-hmm. So we had our people in Europe. I think Nick Schifrin may have done it. I'm not sure. But we had our people in Europe who were closer to Spain go over and do that story. But that's a good question because sometimes I do train accidents. Now, but it's always better if you can be right there near the scene to talk to the people yourself.
Now I have a question for you. The kids have been very interested in using the green screen, and It's a little bit of a trial and error for us. We're learning which color clothes to wear and which colors
Right.
not to wear. But have you ever reported from in front of a green screen?
Oh, sure. I've done lots of things in front of a green screen. We don't use them that much. You use them more actually probably in local news, but we use them a little bit here at the network too. But yes, I've done reports in front of a green screen, and you do have to be very careful what color clothes you wear, because otherwise, as you find out, your clothes disappear into the green screen, right?
Yeah, you become
Very
part of
silly.
that background.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a funny story, okay? When I was in local television news in Oregon, we had someone come and do the weather for us. She was an actress, and I can't even remember her name now, but she was filming a movie, and they said, "Oh, come be a guest weather person for us." So she shows up at the studio in front of the green screen. Oh no, she had the wrong color skirt on, right? And they were going to go on the air in a few minutes. What could they do? Because her skirt was going to disappear. This is a true story. So the woman who was anchoring the news was wearing a skirt. She was behind the anchor desk. She took off her skirt, handed it to the actress, who put it on and did the weather.
Well, that actually happened something similar to William. William, what did you have to do the one time when you were doing it? Yeah, he had to take off his shirt and change into a different one. Thank goodness he had as a change of clothes,
There you
because
go.
we did a test shot and it turned out that his entire body was becoming part of the background.
Right, you have to be careful with that.
So now I know William had one anecdotal question, I guess you could say. So William,
Okay.
what was your favorite toy when you were growing up?
This is a toy you guys have never heard of. I had all named Chatty Cathy. And you used to pull a string at the back of Chatty Cathy, and she would just talk like this. And so maybe that's why I'm so chatty. But the other thing, and this is going to sound funny, my favorite toys were books. I was a really big reader, and I loved to read. And I think if you're going to be a journalist, if you read a lot and you practice writing, those are the two most important things to being a journalist.
Now, besides those two pieces of advice that you gave us, what do you think? What advice could you give us for? As some of them have realized right off the bat they love being in front of the camera, and some have realized right off the bat that they really enjoy doing the filming or the editing or that part of it, which I thought was amazing to see right off the bat that certain children gravitated towards certain positions. So what advice could you give those students, even those who are behind the camera, if they wanted to go into a career as far as newscasting?
Well, I think, first of all, I watched some of your newscasts, and I thought you guys did a great job. And they were really fun to watch. And I love the fact that you did sports and weather, and you did all these different things. And I thought that was you guys really had some good experience. So I thought that was great.
Thank you. What do you say?
Thank you.
So I think the most important thing is to obviously continue to do well in school. If you want to be a reporter, to write and read as much as you can. And if you get the chance when you go into junior high school or high school and work on a school newspaper or a school radio station or a school TV station, if they have them, that's really important. If you want to be behind the camera, I would say do as much, kind of filming as you can. And if you want to do that aspect of it, when you think about going off to school, like to college, if you can go to college, you want to take classes. They'll give you classes that teach you how to do the camera, how to edit, so you can actually put your stories together. And some of that is even available to you on computers now. There are editing programs that you can learn, that you can do on like a home computer, and you could practice. And even if you're going to be a reporter these days, you need to know how to shoot and to edit.
Yeah.
It's very different than when I started. I can't shoot and edit. But nowadays, you have to kind of be able to do everything.
I think a lot of them kind of got the experience to do multiple jobs, and that was one thing. They kind of realized that, if you're shooting a certain story, you can't be too high or too low or too close or too far, and all those different aspects. And then when they got to be the reporter for a certain story, they kind of put their 2 cents in and said, well, maybe you should take a few steps back, or maybe you could try to, go from this side or up or down, different things like that. So you kind of got an experience to give your own perspective as well. Well, Ms. Stark, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to speak with us today. It was absolutely wonderful.
Well, can I ask them a question?
Oh, by all means.
Well, I'm just curious what they liked about doing this. Like, what did they think? You say some of them thought this would be fun to do. Why did they like it?
That's a great question. Who would like to answer that? William, go ahead. Yeah, well, that's a great thing. It's fun. It gives them something to do. But what else? What's some feedback that even some of your family members said, Sarah?
Like, it teaches you how to be in the news.
It teaches you how to be in the news. It works on your what? Your writing skills to write a story. What else, Erica?
Can I tell the story that we doing in the summer camp like this, or the Richmond program?
What about it?
First I didn't like it, and then when I got doing the news, I started to like it.
Yeah, Erica didn't really want to come to the enrichment program camp, and then when she realized we were doing this newscast, she couldn't what? You couldn't what? Yeah, she couldn't wait to come every day. It was something that really and what else? Go ahead, Kiki. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll get to your question. Marissa, what were you going to say?
What did you like most about it?
What did you like most about doing the newscast?
I really like it because I don't really get a script in my part.
Yeah, you don't get a script to do the weather, and you like that a
Right,
lot.
she doesn't.
It's just so easier.
It-
And Mr. Herbert doesn't even know what I'm gonna say.
That's right, I don't. You surprised me. Kiara, go ahead. You can read yours. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I skipped you. When did you start being a reporter?
Oh boy, a long time ago. I started being a reporter in 1979. How many years ago is that? That's more years than I care to think about. That's a long time ago.
No, you weren't born yet, but that's okay.
I wasn't even born.
All right,
You weren't born yet. It was
have-
way before you were born.
Do you have any other questions for us, Ms. Stark?
No, I just think it's great that you guys are doing this, and I hope that even if you don't become a reporter, these are really good skills that will help you in lots of other areas. So it's great that you've done this.
I agree with you. I come from somewhat of a technology background, and I wanted to try to intertwine everything. Miss McGuire and I kind of brainstormed and came up with this idea together because it kind of gives them the ability, because we read a current event every week, to give them the opportunity to kind of brainstorm some stories. They come to the table with their own stories. They form partnerships and teams of cameramen and reporters to write their own stories. And then we get the ability to have certain kids be the filmers. And we only have two boys who wanted to be the editors. Those are my only 2 guys that wanted to work with the computer with me. But they've done an excellent job. It was their idea to try the green screen, so they pushed me to learn more, too. Go ahead, Marissa. I don't know. But we cannot thank you. We understand how busy you are, and we cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your day to speak with us. It really was wonderful.
It was really fun. You guys had great questions, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer, okay?
Yeah. Okay, go quick.
This week, there's a cheerleading and football camp, and I'm going.
That's right. We did a little news clip about it, and your story for this week is going to be reporting on what it was like to attend it. So, guys, one more time, what do we say to Miss Stark?
Thank you!
Thank you, guys. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Enjoy your summer. Thank you.
Very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.